American Forum.
To what degree do you align with the idea that bottom line, that's just about race? It's just about being unhappy that there's a black man in the president. That's fundamentally what all of that has been about, and what much of the Tea Party's energy was about. Do you buy that argument?
I think that it's a little bit of both. I think that there is a tissue rejection of the idea of a Democrat being in the White House, quite frankly. There's a part of the country that just has a right to rule mentality when it comes to the White House, so that any Democrat that gets in is going to face just unyielding and really sometimes absurd opposition, right? When you have a country that was formulated on the basis of racial advantage, of saying that free white men had a certain kind of citizenship and everyone else had a different kind of citizenship, and that's foundational to the way the country was created. When you elected a black man, when you elect somebody associated with the once enslaved population of your country, you're going to get a racial reaction. And I think some of the reaction to Barack Obama was a rejection of that family being in that house, and a sense that they didn't deserve to be there, that they couldn't have gotten there but for some kind of fraud.
And so how do we square that, though, then, with that that in the last presidential campaign, we had an African-American man who was leading the GOP pack at one point early on, what everyone thinks of Herman Cain. He was there, he had the poll numbers.
999.
And now we have another African-American conservative very high in this very scattered Republican field. That does seem to, at least to some degree, belie the idea that race alone as an identifiable thing, that the opposition to the current administration is fundamentally reacting purely to the color of skin of an individual.
Well, I think it's very interesting. When you look at the conservative movement and the Republican Party, there's always been a gravitation toward having people of color be symbolic in that part of the culture, of having an ideological soulmate who is black or who is Indian American like a Nikki Haley, or who is Hispanic like a Marco Rubio. That's a very desirable thing on the right, in part because the Republican Party has become a very white party. It's an overwhelmingly white party. And I think that there is a desire to put forward candidates and individuals of color. The Tea Party movement was pushing forward people of color to say, I think not so much to black and brown people, but to say to white suburbanites, quite frankly, who are uncomfortable with the idea of being in a white party. No, we are not a white party. But what candidates of color on the right do and say is very different from what candidates of color can do and say when they are Democrats. On the right, what is desirable is to have a black body or a brown body, but the ideology be very bleached of the discussion of race, avoiding the topic of race, or really rejecting the idea of racial difference. And that's what candidates like Ben Carson are able to do.
From the University of Virginia's Miller Center, this is American Forum.